It's time to start rallying around America's young conservatives and explore what it means to be a young Republican in the 21st century. In a world where it seems like everyone under 30 must be a liberal, these are the stories you haven't heard before from the voices of America's young conservatives. So let's find out what it truly means to be raised right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Raised Right podcast. I am beyond excited to finally bring this podcast to you guys. It has been in the works for a few months now, been something I've been wanting to do for at least a year, and I'm so grateful to Federated Media for the opportunity to make this dream a reality and to start amplifying the voices of young conservatives everywhere. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Rae'Lee Klein, and I'm going to be your host for the running of this podcast. Like I've mentioned in the trailer, I'm a 21-year-old born and raised conservative out of Wyoming who came to Arizona State to pursue her undergraduate degrees in journalism and political science and had quite the run-in with cancel culture and really just liberalism in college campuses, which I think is something that young conservatives run into everywhere all the time. So what better way to start this podcast than to just sit down and share with you guys my story as a young conservative who went to a liberal institution and the run-in that she had with cancel culture. And it made national news. It was on Fox News, Newsmax, and it all sparked just because of one tweet. And I think that's something, like I said, that's just running so rampant and is so obvious, not only in colleges, but across our country. And it's something that we need to stand up to. So, like I said, I was born and raised in Wyoming, very conservative, and I came to Arizona State University to pursue my undergrad in journalism and political science. I'll graduate with both of those in May, and that just took me 3 years to do. So I'm very, very lucky to have came in, with some credits, had good GPAs and get done a whole year early. So after I graduate in May, then it's on to law school for me, and I'm super excited for that as well. But it didn't happen without its trials and its tribulations. So what started for me as a normal Saturday afternoon on August 29th, 2020, quickly changed into the most emotional and literally life-changing days of my life. It marked the beginning of a battle that would last over the next 6 months and test my strength, my foundation like nothing ever had before. At the beginning of fall semester 2020, I was enrolled in a class that's required for graduation. So this class is designed to be a simulation of an actual newsroom for the broadcast journalist, which is the track that I was on, was broadcast. And you work 2 to 4 full days just developing and honing in on your skills. So part of the final grade for this class is your social media activity. So students are encouraged to post 2 to 3 times a day on Twitter, Instagram, your Facebook pages, just sharing information that you as a journalist think is relevant for your followers and your constituents to know. So this weekend, well, not this weekend, but the weekend that happened back in August, I was scrolling through my own newsfeed and I came across this article that was written by the New York Post, and it outlined the sexual assault allegations against Jacob Blake. And Blake was the African-American male back in August who was shot by police in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So this article followed a very disruptive summer of police-involved shootings, police violence, very touchy subject at the time. And I had contributed my thoughts to this conversation before on other social medias, and of course there was some backlash, some different conversations happened, but nothing even close to what happened after I shared this particular article. So keep in mind, I shared this on my personal Twitter page. It wasn't linked to any of my positions within the university at all. It was just me. And I shared it with the caption, "There's always more to the story, folks. Please read this article to get the background of Jacob Blake's warrant. You'll be quite disgusted." So it's important to note that the article highlighted the sexual assault allegations against him and kind of described why the police were called in the first place. And this is an aspect of the story that really hadn't been shared or talked about at all. And so me as a journalist thought, wow, this is something the people who are following this story should know. wasn't justifying him getting shot. I wasn't justifying the police actions at all in any way, shape, or form. I was just saying, hey, there's another piece of the story here that no one's really talking about, and we should be talking about it. And as a woman reading this very graphic article, I was disgusted. So when I posted that tweet, people were absolutely livid. So within minutes, backlash comments came in, was getting tagged and called a whole bunch of names, and they just kept coming and coming. And I called my mom, and I was like, wow, I really started something here. Like, I really made people upset by this more than I ever have with any of my other tweets or comments. So after I hung up with her, the dialogue on Twitter had turned to focus on my position as the station manager of Blaze Radio, which is ASU's student-run radio station. And by sharing this article from the New York Post and adding my 3-sentence thought, I was all of a sudden unfit to lead this station. And Blaze, at this point, a year under my leadership, had become the 3rd best college radio station. So we were, on a very successful track and had done some amazing things, and I was looking forward to getting to hold that position and make more waves again for another year, my last year. So after this happens, then my phone begins to ring, and I, of course, was very shaken up, very close to tears, just shocked at what was happening. So the board of directors on Blaze, who are fellow students, and the board operates more of like an administrative board. We agreed to all sit down over a quick Zoom call and discuss how we were going to handle this social media blow up, because it obviously was not going over well for me or for the station, more importantly. So we all sat down. They helped me to draft an apology tweet and assured me that everything was going to blow over by Monday. Remember, this happened on a Saturday afternoon, so we figured, this is, people get upset on social media, and most of it's gone as soon as they find something else to go after. While we were on the phone, the Walter Cronkite College Council, who is also run by students, you'll notice a trend here of a really big lack of adult leadership and involvement, but they put out a statement calling for me to willingly resign from my position. And they sent an email to the interim Dean Gilger asking for my removal as well. So, at this point, it would be a lie to pretend like I wasn't just absolutely rattled and even scared as this situation just continued to escalate beyond what I ever thought it would. So death threats and harassment became to roll in next, and I screenshotted and saved as much as I could, but it wasn't everything. I think anybody in that situation, when it happens so fast, and when emotions are involved, it's really hard to keep your head above the water and do, all the screenshots and keep record of everything. I had a great team to kind of help me do that along the way, but had it not been for them, it would have been even more challenging. And then 9:30 that night, I get a call from the dean, which I was expecting at some point or another. We had to have that conversation. And the very first question out of the gate was, well, how are you feeling? And obviously, I was not feeling great. It was very, very hard time. And then she proceeded to ask, you know that what you did was wrong, right? You gave an opinion, which as a journalist, you're not supposed to do. And I still to this day don't think me saying I think you'll be disgusted by sexual assault was really much of an opinion, at least not any more so than some of my peers had given on issues, like Black Lives Matter. And just minutes after getting off the phone with her, literally minutes, I get a message from Blaze's former faculty advisor, who I had been very close with and had developed a really good working relationship with, saying that she wanted to have a quick Zoom call with me and the new faculty advisor who was getting ready to take over. So this is like 10 p.m. by now on a Saturday night that we're still dealing with this. So the two faculty advisors were calling over Zoom to inform me that the board of directors that I'd worked with had also came to the conclusion that it was best if I resigned. So the same people who had had my back just 6 hours ago were now asking me to willingly step down from a position that I'd held for over a year without giving me any reason, as to why or what rule I broke or contract I violated. They just simply didn't like what I had to say. And they'd felt an enormous amount of pressure from people in the school. So when I, asked what I had done wrong, this was the response I got. And this still sticks with me to this day. I was told by the old faculty advisor that as a white woman who was born and raised in Wyoming and grew up doing pageants, I can't talk about stuff like this. And that if I wanted to save any part of my reputation, I needed to step down gracefully instead of going out kicking and screaming. And it's hard to say which straw broke the camel's back, but this conversation, like I said, sticks in my mind a lot. And people that I had worked with, trusted, even considered mentors, were now condemning my entire character by one tweet. And at this point, my fear had completely transformed into anger as I realized that this is blatant cancel culture, and it has come for me. So, to make matters worse, as if, having 6 people and in what seemed like the entire Cronkite school turn on you, I had all but 2 friends turn against me. People I had been friends with for years since I got to college who knew me and had judged my character well enough to want to be friends with me, decided just overnight that I was now the bad guy. Even one of my own roommates, who I was very close with, started referring to me as the, quote, racist roommate, and, was just arguing to people what a horrible person I was. And that, I think, was the hardest obstacle to overcome, even over the lawsuit, because when people who are closest to you turn their back on you simply because of your own political beliefs, that was just unfathomable to me. And I had to constantly remind myself over and over that my foundation was strong, and I was really the only person at the end of the day that I had to live with for the rest of my life. And what was happening was beyond wrong. So I had the amazing support of my family during these difficult hours as well. I remember my mom sitting me down and telling me, look, Ray, if you want to fight or if you just want to resign and let this all go away, we will support you. You're an adult. You know what's best for you, and it's your decision. But I was raised by strong people, and I'm a strong woman because of that. So even then, there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to fight. No doubt at all. So the next day, when the board, the dean, and the faculty advisor had called and asked for my decision, I told them that I had hired legal counsel and would pursue a lawsuit if they removed me from the position. But I was going nowhere willingly. I was not going to resign. And I know that shocked them because the call just, it was quick and it ended immediately after that. I think that's, a key takeaway is what's funny about cancel culture is these keyboard warriors don't know what to do when somebody fights back. We never ever really saw what happens when we involve legal counsel, and I was one of the first cases to do that. And now we've more recently seen it with Gina Carino when she fought back and got an amazing deal. And we'll see it with countless other stories as this continues to go on. Those who stand up to the mob will come out on top because other than get mad and ask for change, there's really not much more that these social justice warriors can do, especially on the legal front. The board of directors, although they would love to and had asked for me to be removed, they didn't have the authority to do so. There was nothing in our club constitution that specifically stated that one position could remove another, etc. So it was ultimately going to be the school's decision whether I was going to continue in this role or if I was going to get the boot. A couple months go by. We have countless meetings. I literally can't even remember how many meetings we had between the board, me, the dean occasionally, assistant deans, faculty advisor. Like, we talked and talked and talked. And I think, the school was really just trying to get either the board or me to break and to come up with a resolution of our own. And that was not going to happen. So ultimately, the dean of the school decided to remove me from the position, and we have it in an email, and I was removed from the position of station manager. And so the lawsuit started, just like I promised it would. And I think it's important to note too that I didn't file a lawsuit to, get a bunch of money or to even get my job back at that point, because those working relationships were pretty deteriorated. It was about calling out this craven thought policing that's taking over our nation and our university. It was all about the principle of raising awareness and holding the responsible parties accountable for their actions. So we wanted to make an example out of ASU on the national scale for everyone else that this isn't okay, that people are getting tired of it, and we're going to now push it to the legal front and see what happens. So that's what we did. I spoke with countless media news outlets across the nation, spoke with, TV interviews, podcast interviews, spoke with political figures, and, all throughout the 6 months that this case developed, I was constantly doing interviews. And I rallied the support of conservative icons and politicians. And that upset people even more because, they just thought at this point I was just calling for attention. I always laugh because I would have loved to go on CNN or speak to liberal figures. I would have loved to, but they didn't reach out to me. They didn't offer any support. And I think that says a lot. On the legal aspect, we brought federal and state First Amendment claims into federal court. And the federal court dismissed those claims, the state claims, on the grounds that they belonged in the jurisdiction of the state court. So it wasn't necessarily like we didn't lose anything in federal court. They just said this belongs more in state court than it does in federal. So by the time we got that ruling, it was already spring semester, and ASU has hired a new station manager. So we didn't have to worry about me getting reinstated because that time frame was shut already. So we filed a notice of claim with the Arizona Board of Regents to begin the process of refiling these state claims back into state court. So, like I said, in basic terms, the federal judge made zero determination about the merits of the case before it was settled out of court. So, and also another important thing that I think gets mixed up is that when people file a notice of claim, the number recorded is always going to be fictitious because the statute requires the claimant to make up a number. So we could have picked $1, we could have picked 270 million, it could have been anything. And the amount selected is non-binding, so every plaintiff's lawyer is always going to shoot for the moon to get a good settlement. So after ongoing discussions, my attorney and I agreed to $500,000 as a number that we kind of just drew out of a hat. But we never really anticipated ever getting that much. A few more months go by, and the case is finally settled out of court. But it wasn't without another ongoing battle. So ASU actually wanted to incorporate a gag order into the settlement. So that means that I could not talk about the case or ASU in any negative light in any way after the case is settled. So I couldn't do what I'm doing now. It blew my mind that their response to a First Amendment lawsuit is to request more First Amendment restrictions. Like, how does that make any sense? So we, fought back very hard on that, and they dropped it eventually. We had asked ASU to apologize and own up to their own faults, admit their wrongdoings, and admit that it was a First Amendment case. They absolutely refused. We attempted to write a joint statement saying that the parties had come to an agreement, and just make a nice statement to the press, make it a little bit more positive, and that didn't happen either. And people ask me, why didn't you try to file defamation cases or emotional damage claims? Why didn't you do any of that too? And talking over with my attorney, anything that a judge could have ruled for me in those two instances, either myself, my attorney, or the conservative figures and the media had already done. I had gotten several job offers at this point, made amazing connections to people all over the world, and received countless opportunities, including this one, to start becoming a voice for young conservatives. And so really, I should be thanking them for launching my career in ways that I wouldn't have been able to do had this not happened. So by the end of it, the only thing left to really argue over was a monetary settlement. And we were able to get them to agree to reimburse me for certain school fees that eventually, ended up equating to 5 times what my salary would have been as a station manager and 7 times what the statutory penalty requires. So, and even then it could have ended up being more, but there wasn't much left to reimburse me for. I'm a full-time, full scholarship Dean's List student and have no tuition costs whatsoever. Very lucky that my hard work paid off and I was rewarded for that. So the only costs I have are housing fees, which I incur willingly because I wanted to live closer to campus and be with my friends. And then when that couldn't happen because of the harassment and the death threats I was facing, I didn't get to enjoy that. And at the end, I think we could definitely declare victory. It was about the principle. It was about standing up to cancel culture in a legal front and showing what happens when you fight back and rallying support and calling national attention to it. And we definitely did that. And I'm proud of that. An example was made out of my university on the national level by calling, like I said, attention to this great dishonor that's being done to young adults just trying to make their place in the world. We all have opinions. We all have, backgrounds, and we come to college with them. And college is supposed to be this great, inclusive place. We're able to share those thoughts and feelings, of course, debate them, of course, argue them with people, but never have your entire livelihood threatened because of them. That's a next level that we have got to stop taking it to. I know that I wasn't the first student to ever go through this by any means, and I know that I won't be the last, but I will be one of the first to stand firm in their foundation and to fight back. So while my own suit is settled, my work is far from done, and I'm very much looking forward to the opportunities ahead to continue to champion for the First Amendment across the nation. And one of the ways I get to do that is by hosting this podcast and by connecting with and sharing the stories of other young conservatives out there who either went through something similar to me or maybe something completely different, but it still impacted their life in a good or a bad way. And that's definitely a demographic of voices that is silenced so much, and I cannot wait to start doing that. So there's your first episode of Raised Right, a little bit about me and my story and why I get to do this. Stay tuned because next week I'm really, really excited. I got to sit down and interview the Patriot Sisters. And next week's episode is going to be all about them, their story, where they came from, and how they are really making an impact for young conservatives across the country. And we have a lot in common, and you'll kind of find that out. It's going to be a really, really fun interview, and I can't wait for you to see that too. So thank you so much for staying and listening to this episode, and we'll see you next time. Enjoy this episode of Raised Right? Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app to catch the next episode. And be sure to like and follow us on Instagram at Raised Right Podcast and Facebook and Twitter at Raised Right Pod.